Welcome, Floss Tube. Welcome to my channel. I'm Susan Standley, and this is Susan Standley Stitch in Time, where I talk about the history and reproduction of cross-stitch samplers, quilts, antique sewing notions, antique textiles, and their history, and anything else related to stitching in the past. So I hope you'll stick around if you haven't met me or seen me before, and thank you so much for those of you who have come back. Thank you again, as always, for your heartfelt comments and encouragement and support and technical help. It's just all so appreciated and makes this so fun. I've enjoyed so many new friendships in this community. This is video number 4 today, and we're going to talk about some new things that I've been kind of burning in my mind and show you some new whips and some new purchases and all kinds of fun stuff. So I've tried filming this. This is the 4th time now. Yesterday was a bright sunny day and the lighting was great, and today it's a little overcast. I'm having every technical difficulty you can imagine, so hopefully we can make it through this. Again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your comments about my son Scott last time and his little surprise entrance. I didn't get him to do another little pop-up this time because he's back. He lives about 2 hours away from me, so he's back at his home working, and I did tell him that he could probably start his own floss tube channel, no problem, hands down, and have a large following pretty quickly. So anyway, that was fun. Thanks for joining in. I wanted to give you some information. I had somebody mention to me might be nice for to get some information on how to contact me, and I will link this below, and I will get a little more professional with this, but this is my Instagram, Standley Susan, all lowercase, and my email. And you can message me through Messenger on Instagram, or email me if you have any questions, or if, let's say, maybe you want a drawing and I need to get your address, something like that. So anyway, there's that. I can't believe that I reached 2,000 subscribers in this last few weeks. And I don't have a giveaway this time, but I will next time to celebrate that. And I'm just so thrilled. I'm just thrilled that there are people out there in the world that enjoy this topic as much as I do. I love everyone's comments. They mean so much to me. But one comment I received that was so special was from a viewer, someone who said, I didn't think I'd like this history stuff at all. I didn't think I'd be interested, but I really enjoyed the video, and I feel like I learned something. That just really made me happy, because if I can if I can encourage people to connect with the past and the people from the past that we're standing on their shoulders and carrying this forward, I don't know why, that just makes my heart very happy. So as you can see, today I'm in a different room. I'm in my sewing room. We'll see how it goes, but I'm gonna go for it. The random comment picker and I just programmed everything in. I had a giveaway last time, Quilting Traditions. We were talking about stars. The winner of that giveaway is Rose Heck, and her lovely comment. So thank you so much, Rose. Congratulations. I hope you enjoy the book, and please message me through either of those 2 venues that I just shared earlier, and I will get this off to you. I also want to share some wonderful happy mail that I received from Elaine, and Elaine had a stepfather who was involved in the insurance business, and one of the things that he passed out when he was calling on people were these needle books. And she saw my floss tube, and so she shared these with me, and I can't tell you how much this means to me. I can add these to my collection. These are just, to me, these are classic and so lovely to have a part of her life in my home. That shiny, that iconic shiny paper. So thank you so much, Elaine. She wrote me a lovely note, and I'll keep this all together in my collection of needlework books. It's just really delightful, and I sure appreciate it. I wish I could meet all of you face to face, and who knows, maybe someday there'll be an Instagram retreat. That'd be kind of fun. All right, so today I want to talk to you about something, you know, we usually, talk about cross-stitch samplers, antiques, reproductions that I'm working on, or quilts that relate, and I don't separate the topics out because in my mind, in my world, they all blend together. A motif from a quilt makes me think of that same motif on a sampler, which makes me think of a thread color or a dye lot for a fabric. It just all blends. So my YouTube videos are a little bit unique, and I hope if you're joining me for the first time, you'll hang in there and just check it out. I know it's different, and I'm just glad some other people enjoy it. So today I want to talk about a dye, a textile, and it will also tie into floss and fabric, but of course, I guess I've been seeing this a lot, and it also happens to be my favorite color. So the dye I want to talk about today is the dye for the color red. And I'm sure there's people out there who don't love red, but it seems like to me almost every project I start, either in quilting or cross stitch, even small handcrafts, there's always something red. It just seems to draw me in. I love red. Red is a very attention-getting color, and it's a very dynamic color. But I just think red makes me happy, and I think color is so personal, and we are drawn to colors for so many different reasons. And I'm sure there are people out there who don't care for red, but red is kind of has a global significance. Across the world, red is used for celebrations. So red is on the color wheel opposite of purple, and it's on the traditional color wheel as a primary color. And red carries a lot of meanings globally, and in samplers and quilts. And so some of those meanings include sacrifice. It represents sacrifice. It represents blood. It represents danger and warning. It can represent courage, heat, passion, love, anger, joy, happiness, and good fortune. And I was just doing a little reading about the color red, and there's a whole list on Wikipedia of idiomatic language surrounding the color red, to say that you're tied up in red tape, to say that you caught someone red-handed, to say I see red, you're angry. Anyway, I just thought it's very interesting how red ties into our language and our culture and our color. So today I'm going to talk a little tiny bit about, and I'm not going to get super technical, on the way red was dyed for fabric and fibers in the 1800s before synthetic dyes were created. And so everything prior to the last quarter of the 1800s, so 1875, maybe 1860 on, was dyed naturally. And so in these antique samplers that we find prior to that date, those dyes were set with a mordant, and the mordant is something that sealed the dye to the fiber. So you have the fiber, either silk, wool, cotton, or linen, and that can either be in cloth or floss or thread. You have the natural substance used to create the color, and then you have the mordant, which is what, like I said before, kind of affixes or bonds the color to the fiber. And so the mordant, prior to synthetic chemical creations, would be things like vinegar, urine, gall, iron. They put it all in a big iron pot and let the iron leach into the substance, the dye. It could be lead, it could be acetate. Alum was also used, tin was used. It was frequently very toxic. And so these dyed reactions would affix to the substance, the fiber, and you'd have a color. Well, some of these colors were very fast and true and lasted, and some of them washed right out. Now, a lot of the samplers and quilts and old textiles that we see have been overly washed. They've been bleached out by the sun. Who knows what's happened to them. And so the color is changed, or the color has done something else that we see. And in the quilt world, when a color bleeds or runs into other colors, doesn't stay right on the fiber it was intended and dyed for, it's called traveling. And so we see that in samplers as well, especially with black, and sometime I'll talk about that. But as soon as the fiber is hit with water or something wet, it just rushes out of the fiber, and the dye rushes into everything around it. So it's always sad, and it's even more disappointing when it happens nowadays, because we do have such color fast substances and fibers to work with, but it still can happen, and it's heartbreaking. And I'll talk sometime about how to set your color if you are concerned, but I think most floss and fabric even is color fast, but certain colors I still pre-treat. So, and I'll talk about that. So what did people use? What was used? What has been used throughout time to create this beautiful color of red? Early on in prehistoric days, ochre from the dirt was used to create body paint, to do artwork on rocks and petroglyph creations. Other things used were insects. And one of the chief insects for the color red that was used is the cochineal bug. And this is a picture. The cochineal bug grows on prickly pear cactus in the Sonoran Desert region. And I used to live in Tucson, Arizona for quite some time. And you could see these bugs pooling up. They're really tiny. They're really microscopic. But you could see them pooling around the pads of prickly pear. And actually, when my kids were young, we scraped them off and pounded them up and made kind of a dye soup and stuck fabric in them, just because that was the cool thing to do when, you're working with kids and exploring the environment. And so this is a little picture of what the bug looks like. And it's the female that emits the color. And here's another picture of the prickly pear pad with a collection of these cochineal bugs. And so the indigenous people to that region were using these bugs to create color. And then when Spaniards came, they globbed onto the idea, and they actually took this back to Europe. So that's how it spread throughout Europe, because you need a hot, dry climate for these prickly pear cactus to grow, and the bug seems to be attracted to that plant. So it's interesting. So now we've got this color in Europe, and it spread. Now there were other things used in Europe, like lichen and moss, and I do believe, and I'm like I said, I'm a novice and I'm learning, that most of the Scottish samplers, the reds in those, were dyed with lichens and mosses. But if you have information, please share. I would love to know what you know, and I would make it available to everyone. But anyway, so this color red was used, and it adhered to certain fibers better than others. It seemed to really like wool, and the famous redcoats in England, their uniforms were dyed with this cochineal. The guards at Buckingham Palace and around London, their clothing was originally dyed with this cochineal. So it was a very prevalent and profitable business to be involved in, was the dyeing of fibers. Okay, another thing that was used was the root of a plant called the madder plant. And I'm going to show you a picture. I'm going to pop a picture in so you can see what it looks like. So these natural dyes were used until about 1868 for red, for the color red. And at that time, after 1868, a German chemist discovered a formula to make a synthetic dye that was color fast. And the goal, of course, throughout all this time has been to have a color fast dye that didn't fade or travel into other fibers around it when it got wet. So the original red in quilts often leads you to the time period that that quilt was made. And I suspect that might be true with samplers as well, and I'm still learning about that. If you know, please share. I'd love to know. But solid red in quilts is it's very hard to identify the time period, because solid red was used throughout the 1800s. And like I've said before, my area of study that I'm most interested in is the end of the 1700s through the 1800s and up till the 1900s. And I do love things in the 1900s as well, but I'm really drawn to the early 1800s, late 1700s, up until maybe the mid 1800s, and that just seems to be what I like. So anyway, so we talked about the insect and the plant, and back to the madder plant. The madder plant was the root that was used to create the dyes, and the dyes were various shades of red depending on the mordant. So you would get things from a brick red all the way to the bright, in quilting, what we call is turkey red, that really vibrant cherry red. And of course we have all that variety in floss as well. So all right, stitching with red. I think probably almost everything I stitch has some form of red in it, and I think I mentioned that a minute ago. I know a couple episodes back, Daisy K Primitives, I believe it was, yes, episode 14, she showed her collection of reds. So obviously she loves red, and I thought that was so effective and helpful. And I was talking to a friend of mine in Tucson, and she said, well, I've been collecting reds. And she said, let me send you some samples. So I have to show you what she sent me. This is Ruth, my friend Ruth, and she is also a quilter, but she made this gorgeous array of red floss, and she added a couple others in here that we had been talking about as well, but I wanted you to see this. these reds, they're all named something that is very true, you know, that you would associate with the color red, but not sure that you can see quite as well as I can. But these reds range from brick all the way down to almost a brown. And I'm just going to hold this here because you might want to take a picture. This is a really great conglomeration of reds that are very muted and I believe really good for reproduction samplers. Now, having said that, I think red really plays with the colors around it, and it also plays with the linen that it's on. So I don't know that you can always say I'm only going to use this red, you know, one certain red, because I do think it's color dependent. I don't know if you can tell this one, it's very orangey. This one's a lot more pinky, and then this one's very brown. So anyway, I just thought that was so sweet, and I had to share that with you, that she took the time to make that for me. And actually I could actually pull some of those off. Now I want to of course collect them all, but I did want to show you the reds I do have, and I am working on a red band sampler, which I'll show you here. And that band sampler I played with using one strand of floss, and then I tried two and I was much happier, so I'm sticking with the two. I did not do it in the silk, which probably would have been, I would have been happy with the one strand of silk. But anyway, so I have several projects going with red, and I pulled them out, so I did have to put little labels on them so they didn't lose their place. This is for a project that I'm going to talk about, the Jessie Watson, in a minute. A lot of people have worked on that. This is a Vicki Clayton silk. It's called OMG Red. This is Gloria. Oops. All right, so I've got some DMC reds in here. This one is 321. Which I think is very similar to this red that I'm using in Anne Gott, which is called Ribbon Red. And then there's this Cosmo Red, which kind of is more tomatoey, maybe a little more orangey. I love this red. I'm using this on my band sampler, Schoolhouse Red by Gentle Arts. And then we get into the deeper shades. This is Anchor number 44. And then this one, of course, I'm using in a new project that I'll show you next time called Cupid. Lots of variegation. And the last one, oops. I'm using in a new project, and this is DMC 816. So I just thought that was kind of fun to see the variety of reds. And another tool that you may want to have at your disposal is this DMC floss book. I think it changes periodically. Every time they come out with new floss, they update it. But it has real floss, and you can compare, if you want to do a floss conversion, pardon my hand, you can compare the floss here with something else that you might have in your stash. If the chart calls for a DMC, you can, and you want to get it, use a silk. And so I decided to invest in this. It's large. So that's another fun tool to have at your disposal. So I love, you all know I love books, I love research, but I also love historical fiction. And I did come across a book, and I ordered it, and it didn't come yet, but I decided to shoot my video anyway. And I'm sure it's going to be good. It's called A Perfect Red by Amy Butler Greenfield. And it's an historical fiction about empire, espionage, and the quest for the color of desire. And so it talks all about the colors of red and the dyes and the bugs and how the different products that were used to create red were moved around the world. Kind of like if you've ever studied the spices of the world and how they transferred. It's the same concept as motifs and designs in samplers and quilts. How do these images, how do these floral images start in one place and end up over here? And it's, of course, people traveling, it's commerce, it's people being moved, sharing ideas. I just find that fascinating, and I find the stories behind the people who are doing all this fascinating as well. So I'm going to pop a picture in. You know I'm a quilter, and I've quilted for quite some time, and I do have quite a collection of fabric. And instead of laying it all out for you, I just thought I'd videotape a little bit of it on the shelf. I store my fabric by color, and I have a lot, so don't hold it against me. I'm going to end up having a lot of floss too, because it's just my thing, and I know you can relate. So I'm going to show that video right here. So you can see from that fabric collection that the fabric also ranges in that shade from brick to vibrant red to what we call in the quilt world Garibaldi red to turkey red, and then into the more claret burgundy shades. So, and it all was dependent on the source of the dye and the mordant and the fiber. And you know from stitching that linen can, depending on the fiber count even, be dyed with the same dye and have a different effect. So a higher count linen dyed in the same dye with a lower count linen will come out differently. All right, so red in quilts, like I said, was popular all across the century of the 1800s, and it is very hard to date. So how can we talk about red without talking about a motif that comes to mind in quilts and samplers that is red, and just kind of something that is on your mind this time of year, springtime, and that is the strawberry. And I know, let's see, Crafty Cottage Stitches, Jeanette and Heather are hosting a strawberry social. They're doing a sew along, a stitch along with your chart having a strawberry in it. And I think that's so wonderful. I love it. Strawberries have shown up in needlework probably as soon as needlework started. Strawberries are named for the way they strew across the land, and so strawberry is probably a form of the word strew berry, and they show up in artwork in architecture. They're even on the rim of, the strawberry leaf is on the rim of many early crowns. They pop up in the 1300s and they're still popular today. They have a lot of symbolism. The 3 leaves relate to the Trinity, are symbolic of the Trinity, and people used them to represent that. The 5-petaled flower represents the wounds of Christ, and strawberries also represent Venus, the goddess of love. So they were wild until about the 14th century, and then they became cultivated in gardens. And they were used for medicinal purposes. They were used to cure depression, colic, and the quenching of thirst. And something I read said that Thomas Wolsey created the delicacy of strawberries and cream for King Henry VIII. And how many of you are familiar with this nursery rhyme? Curly locks, I got this on Wikipedia. Curly locks, wilt thou be mine? Thou shalt not wash the dishes, nor yet feed the swine, but sit on a cushion and sew a fine seam, and feed upon strawberries, sugar, and cream. So that nursery rhyme is from England, and I did not find the date on it. Maybe perhaps somebody knows when that was written. And apparently there's a Scottish version as well. So anyway, okay. See, I diverse into all kinds of little paths. And okay, cross-stitch patterns. Cross-stitch with strawberries. I'm probably working on 3 projects right now that have borders, cross-stitch borders that are strawberries. So that's just a given that, you know, many patterns have strawberries. And one of the ones that I want to show you that I have not started yet, but is this Isabella Fox. And you can see these are really predominant, you know, they're very bold strawberries. They're all one color. Some of them are layered, pink, white, red. Anyway, and I do have a couple antique samplers with strawberries that I might pop in at the end of this so you can see. I didn't bring them in the room with me. I have this lovely pair of pin cubes pattern by with my needle, and that little nursery rhyme, that little verse I read to you is stitched onto these pin cubes. And I will talk about pin cubes and the history of pin cubes at some time when I talk about pins. But it's covered with strawberries, and just know for now that it's, you know, very significant and that it fits in with that time period. Pin cubes were popular in the Victorian era, and strawberries have kind of been popular in needlework throughout. So another fabulous strawberry pattern by With My Needle, Ellen. Thank you, Ellen. Is Strawberries So Fair, and it's a needle roll, and I really want to make this. I'm hunting for, I think I want kind of a denim-y blue to put that on, to stitch it on, and it's just delicious and darling. I love the little either pin or needle holder there, and you know, it's got a place for your scissors. It's just adorable, and it's got this little drawstring pouch to put supplies in, and I think it will fit into my stitchery basket. So that's definitely going to be a start. I'm challenged finding the right linen. I love it. And then of course I had to order this as soon as I saw it. Not so much for the strawberry element. I do love it. I do love it made up into a strawberry. I have 2 little squirrels that chase around my backyard. I have a couple fir trees in my backyard, and they loop around it, so I had to get it for them. But I also love the houses, and I love the red work. So I may end up popping it into a strawberry format, or just frame a squirrel and a reverse image of him and put him in a frame. I'm not sure yet. But I love that. So cute. All right, and then I have a dear friend who is a quilt designer, And she also does cross stitch designs, and she has a free chart that you can find on Moda Stitch Pink, and it's a pink band sampler. It's by Brenda Riddle. Here's the floss that she uses, but look at this lovely little band. You could just use the strawberry. You could use all three. You can extend it. I mean, you can do whatever you want. And this is a free download on the Moda website. So I hope you can make that available to yourself. As far as quilts go, there's one strawberry pattern that stands out in my mind that I've been working on off and on for years, because it's quite a project. And this may still be available, but you may have to get it through the secondary market or through a quilt shop. But this is a reproduction of a strawberry quilt that was made between 1840 and 1860. It looks an awful lot like those little stitched strawberries. So that, of course, makes me very excited because I love making these connections. Anyway, Terry Clothier Thopmson has just done a fabulous job with reproducing antique quilts. And you could make one block and make it into a pillow if you're a quilter. Now, it's got reverse applique and lots of applique. So therefore, I have not done a whole ton of it. I've got a ton prepped, but I'll show you this. This is how big it is. Here's one block. So I've got the So don't hold me to it. One day I'll have it done, but that's my strawberry quilt that I hope to work on. And I'm going to pop in a picture here of one of the quilts that was behind me in one of my earlier videos. One of the blocks has some strawberries, so I'll just pop a picture in here of that. All right, and so how could we leave this video talking about strawberries without talking about a couple other cool strawberry things? This, I can't even use it. I just think it's so beautiful. This is a strawberry waxer. And this is, oh boy, Brenda Gervais. No, Stacy Nash. She has a whole bunch, and you probably have seen them, but I just love it. I hang it up. It's just so lovely. Can't even use it. And then I want to show you some strawberry emeries. And a strawberry emery, I have an earlier video, before I found out about Floss Tube, I was doing videos that I was calling A Very Fine Notion, where I would talk about an antique needlework tool and the history behind it. And so I don't want to, if you've watched those, I don't want to overkill it, but, and I'll link it below so you can watch it. It talks about strawberries and tomato pin cushions and their history. This one is kind of a treasure. It's full of emery. It's got the adorable little stitched cap, but a lot of people think that the emery, which is kind of a sand that's inside of these, was to sharpen the needles, but actually they would take the needle and run it sideways back and forth through the emery like that to clean off burrs and tarnish and rust, because needles were treasures earlier on. They weren't readily available. You didn't have hordes of needles like I do today. And you didn't throw your needle away easily. So anyway, and then this is another one that I've collected and I found. I just think it's so interesting. And then of course, I do have a pile of tomato pin cushions, but I just pulled one out because it has the tomato and the emery attached, and I always grab those if I find them at a thrift store or antique store. Garage sale. I love them when they're full of pins. They make me really happy. All right, and then of course I had to make some tomatoes now. Here's my cutlery basket of tomatoes, but this one is more like a turnip. I used a textured velvet to make this one, and then the cap is wool, and I didn't finish it with fancy stitches. I mean, I left them kind of primitive. They're just fun. And you can, you know, there's a whole world of dyeing and over dyeing and antiquing with tea and coffee, but you can make these relatively easily, even if you don't own a sewing machine or don't want to use a sewing machine. They're just fun. All different sizes, all different fabrics. I made these with some friends when I lived in Texas. That's a very happy memory. This one's kind of neat because the fabric kind of represents the outside of a strawberry. And so strawberries have been so idealized because they are a fruit that's sweet and delicious with a beautiful shape. When you cut them, they look like a heart. They also, you know, they have seeds. The seeds are like those teeny tiny little things on the outside, and they do kind of get stuck in your teeth, but I love this one. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. I have a couple new books that I purchased. I really don't make money off about books. I just love having resources in my collection. This one I just got, haven't read it yet, Georgia's Girlhood Embroidery. So it's an American sampler book. Lots of pictures, lots of information. And each chapter is about a girl, and they give you the story of the girl. Some of these I wish were charts. I saw a chart recently that looked very similar to that. Some of these have a lot of words, and you can see, okay, so that's that traveling. I mean, we all know when the dye has bled, and it's heartbreaking. I'm sure it was heartbreaking to them as well. Of course, then there's stains and anyway, so this is going to be a really fun read because it's, you know, stories of actual people, and I think that's what I love about needlework is it's your way of communicating, it's your voice, it's your way of leaving a piece of yourself behind, and that's what these people did. Another book that I was so happy to purchase, and I want to thank Penny for letting me know about this. Penny Tucker alerted me to this book, and I really haven't had a chance to dive into it yet, but Imitation and Improvement, the Norfolk Sampler Tradition, Joan Martin Lucacher. Might not be pronouncing that correctly. And this is, well, it's just an amazing book. It talks about genealogy, and it starts with the sampler tradition. It goes through different styles of samplers, different people who created the samplers. It talks about darning samplers. It's full of history. It's full of pictures. And then at the very end, there's a chart for this gorgeous sampler. And the chart is huge, which is nice. So I'm super excited about these two books to add to my collection, and I hope as I read them, you know, I can share things with you. Here, I just opened this, and there's that little row of strawberries right there on that sample or antique sampler. So pretty neat. All right. If you have books that you love, I would so enjoy hearing from you and knowing what resources you go to. I love it all. Okay, so now I want to show you my some new starts or just some new things that I've purchased. So of course I had to get on the bandwagon because I just loved this little Clarissa Beaumont that popped up. It was a downloadable from Little Robin. 1875, which is, you know, I kind of like the earlier pieces, but this one just, it just looks really fun. And so I got a 36 count vintage country mocha, and I just pulled DMC floss for it, and I just stuck them on the ring so you could see the colors. But I think it's going to be so much fun. There's so many colors to play with. I'm soothed by a one color project, but I'm also really challenged and invigorated by being able to change threads often. So this one will give me, I mean, some of these are like right next to each other on the color, like 833, 834, you know, just so you're getting some shading. So that's going to be really fun. I'm excited about that start. I've been really self-disciplined. I have not started making a stitch on that. Okay, and then the next one I finally got all the materials for was the Jessie Watson 1816, and a lot of you have already finished this. This is Hands Across the Sea, and it's a downloadable. And there's a sew-along going on for autism awareness. And I used to work with people that had speech challenges, language communication difficulties, and so it's kind of that benefits kids that I really have a heart for. So I wanted to join in on that. And I got the Vicki Clayton silks. She has a packet that you can purchase, and I'm using To Die For River Stone, I think. I don't know. Some of these really blend in with that fabric, that linen choice, but I don't always mind having things that are very low contrast. It just adds to the antique appeal. So I don't know. I mean, some of these are so close that they won't show up at all, but I just think they're so pretty. And I have to say, I don't know, there's something about silk. It's pretty fun to work with. All right, then if you saw my Instagram post, and I think I mentioned it on Instagram, but I had ordered this Dutch sampler from Needlework Expo. I just think it's amazing. And I saw Betsy Figger had started it, so I mean, those colors are just color is amazing. And I'm using the NPI silks. I'm sorry, they don't show up in here. I find that I like my silks. I do have those Vicki Clayton out, but they just get so staticky. So I put them in here. Not a really good viewing. And I just put a couple stitches in. And I want to know, do you, when you have a variegated thread, do you stitch half crosses all the way and then go back, or do you complete them? I've completed them, and so then you get these really bold white patches, but it's all right. It's going to be fun. I got way too many projects already. Okay, and then the last one, of course, is Anne Gott. Oh, I just love Anne Gott, and she doesn't get much attention this month, but she got a little bit, so. and got is the Sew Along with Attic. The Attic, it's a Needlework Press publication. And here's the floss. Oh, that's not so good. And I pulled the red out to show you when I was showing you the reds, so it's not there. But anyway, so I made a little bit of progress. It's, of course, there's some more strawberries. And I'm just doing a little bit of the border and a little bit of the grass each time so it doesn't end up. And I made a mistake on that urn and I just left it. So, all right. Well, thank you again for joining me. Oh, my Civil War Bride or Lost Groom or Bird of Paradise quilt, whatever name you want to give it, is back here. My last block is there. I still have a few more leaves to applique on. I think that block had 50 leaves. I am not kidding. It's not even that big. It's of a block. So I've been stitching leaves for nights now. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for commenting. Subscribe and like. And if this was new to you, please leave me a comment. Yay or nay. I know this is, you know, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it sure is mine. So thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you again next time I post a video. Until then, happy stitching.